Hey guys, this is Movie Man, and today I'll be reviewing Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters 1984. I thought, since I just did a video on why I love it so much, I thought it's October. It's a Halloween kind of movie. Let's do it. So, Ghostbusters. This film starts off in the famous library's opening. And what I love about, and so it's a librarian going down shelves some books. And I love this opening. Not only builds great tension and showcases amazing music by Elmer Bernstein, but it also has fantastic camera work and really creates an ominous, creepy tone that really sets the tone for the film and makes it genuinely creepy in the opening sequence for a comedy. Well, I'd say a comedy, not comedy horror, comedy, a scary comedy. And I love the opening as you see books fly from the shelves, and you see like the drawers open and they go all over the place. And I love that it was not CGI, it wasn't green screen, it was done by actual people on the set, which made it more cool because then it was actually done for real. And it actually is kind of scary because you're like, what's happening? Where's this gonna go? And then she's running, and then you see this white flash and she screams, and then it goes right to cut to title of the film, Ghostbusters. And then it pans to Dr. Peter Venkman, who is played marvelously by Bill Murray. And we get an introduction to who this character is. In the scene, we see what kind of a person he is, what his personality is, how professional and serious he takes his position and his job, and just as an overall, just who he is as a person. And the scene is played fantastically. And I have to tell you, it is one of my favorite scenes in the film. The reason why is because this is how you introduce a character. Show, even if he's sarcastic, if he's mean, whatever. You show them who they are to the audience, they will know exactly off that very first scene who they are. So you give them a good introduction scene, and that's a fantastic introduction scene. It's him sitting, and he's doing this evaluation with two volunteers. One's a guy, one's a girl. And they're using flashcards, and they're connected to electric shock. So he wants to see if they can be able to recognize the cards that he could see if they can guess it right. And if they don't, they get an electric shock. And the guy gets some of them right, actually, and he still shocks them. The girl gets all of them wrong, and he doesn't shock her. And he says that she even gets them all right. But we see right then and there, because she's a girl and he finds her cute, he's not going to do it. Because he finds this guy, he just wants to piss this guy off, he just does it anyways. And then after that, the guy storms out, pissed off at him, and he tries to make a move on this girl. So we see that he's kind of like a ladies' man, and also that he will do anything for any girl he finds cute. And then we see Dan Aykroyd come right into the office right when they're talking, and he bursts in with such energy, and Dan Aykroyd brings such life and soul to this movie, not just writing wise, but in his performance. And Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray also showcase fantastic chemistry, as you discover in this very scene, and they gel so well together. Their comedy, their back and forth banter is fantastic, and he tries to tell Peter that they have to go to the New York Public Library. As this news broke out there. There's this free-floating ghost scared the librarian, as we discovered earlier, and he's reluctant to go because he wants to chat to this cute girl at this college, and he says, "No, you're coming with me." And he's a little annoyed, but he goes along with them anyways. And as they get to the New York Public Library, they talk. He talks to Dan Aykroyd's character and says basically, you guys have been going around working your ass off trying to find every single ghost, but how do we know that they're real? Because most people just want attention. They get to the library, and this is another great moment because we've seen another introduction of a massive character in this film, played marvelously by the late great Harold Ramis as Egon. And as they're there, Peter, played by Bill, again cannot take anything seriously, and takes a book and he just drops it and makes a massive noise, not just to the library, but to Egon's ear. And he gets up and he realizes that Peter's there. They then go and now we see the three of them walking together. We say, okay, these are the three guys. These are the guys we're going to be staying with throughout this movie. And right off the bat, do you believe that they have chemistry? They gel well. They have great rapport, and you can't help but fall in love with each one of these guys just within the first few minutes. And it's astonishing that they get you to care so much about these characters and become very attached to them within the first few minutes. And I can tell you why they were able to do it so well and make it pay off greatly. It's due to very strong and sharp writing and to its ability to hook you with its premise that you already saw in the opening scene. So now, since they're at the library, they have to investigate. And so now, since we see how Egon is very professional, we see that Ray's very passionate, we see that Peter's a very smart ass, how is this scene going to play out? Now we're going to see how they are professionally together. So Peter talks to the librarian, Alice, and says basically, has any of your family like taken abused drug substances or alcohol, and then he just asks very, very sarcastic questions, and then Ray discovers that, Egon discovers that the ghost is moving down in the library. So they go down, followed by fantastic music again by Ellen Bernstein. He gives a great score throughout the film, and he really knows how to set the tone in every scene, but the music in the library I find very eerie and very creepy, and I love it because they're funny, but the music's scary. So they're setting the tone of humor and horror, meshing it perfectly throughout this film the entire time. And so while they're at the library, you see like a stack of books this high, and you see like a bunch of, and then you see them walking by, and Peter's totally not having this, not believing any of it, and then they're walking, and a shelf falls over. Fun fact, when that shelf fell down, that massive library shelf, the bookshelf, yeah, it wasn't supposed to fall. That just happened, and the response they gave was genuine, and the lines that they added in were not scripted. That is the brilliance of great improvisational acting by Bill and Dan. And then there's also a shot, I have to back up because I just totally missed the part, where you see slime. Many times we see slime in this. Well, not much slime in this movie. There's a lot. It's Ghostbusters too. But in this here, there's a part where you see Bill, and they tell him to get a sample of the goo, the slime. And so he's trying to get it, and he's not taking it seriously, and just wipes it off on the shelf. And then the shelf falls over, as I mentioned, and then they come across the ghost. Now, there are many ways they could play out the scene. They could have taken it very, very seriously, or it could have just gone play for laughs. And what makes it funny was that they take it so seriously. That's what I love about it. In the scene, you see them turn around a corner, they're getting closer and closer, the music's building, the tension's building, and then boom, you see the librarian, she's purple. And then, how do you react when you see the ghost? They don't know how to react, they have never seen a ghost before. Like how many people react, they're just stunned. And Egon and Ray are so astonished. And again, we learn who Peter is in these first few minutes of this film because Peter's totally unimpressed. He's like, what do we do? Like, anyone else would say, well, like, what do we do? And so they all go aside and they kind of talk, okay, what we're going to do. And so then they just try to think of a way how to communicate to this ghost. And they bring Bill out and they say, okay, go try to communicate. And so he goes out and he just tries to ask very basic questions. The librarian tells him to shush. He says, okay, guys, this isn't working. What do I do? And, I love this part here because since none of it's working, and since Bill's being incredibly sarcastic, and they actually want to try to do something science-wise that could really help them, what's his name? Ray comes up with an idea. He doesn't tell them. They go, and they just walk slowly towards her and yell, "Get her!" And that's it. And then they get scared and they run into the library. They don't capture the ghost? No. Do they come back to the ghost later in the movie? No. There is no mention of that ghost later in the movie. Ever. And I find that very ballsy. Because they never discuss it again. They don't capture the ghost from what I know, from what the audience knows from when they see the movie. So then after they get scared and they discuss how it was thrilling and how it felt and the adrenaline is pumping through them. And Egon's very eager that saying basically, guys, I think there's a way we can actually contain these ghosts and keep them indefinitely in a containment unit, which is discussed later on in the film, which I'll discuss in a bit. And then after, they talk about, okay, how are we going to make this a job? And so they all discuss, okay, so how are we going to be doing this and taking this forward? They get back to the university, as they are funded by the university that they're at. And I love this scene because it shows that it's not all fun and games. There are consequences to their actions, and they're not afraid to show very serious moments in this film and not just go for laugh. They show some serious and very, very serious moments in this movie. One of them being when they get fired from the university. The dean says, like, you guys are irresponsible, you're reckless, you don't, Mr. Venkman. As we've observed the audience, we know that he does not take his job professionally or serious whatsoever in his profession. And what does he say back? The kids love us. Like, he just wants to have fun. And the dean knows, like, that no. And so they cut ties, they cut all of their funding, they fire them, and now they have no job. So this creates a very interesting scene, followed by a scene with Dan and Bill Murray. They basically talk about, okay, so we just got fired from the university. What the hell are we going to do? And then Bill kind of stands up and he goes, maybe there's a reason why we got fired. Maybe there's a reason behind all of this. And I think we were destined to get thrown into the university. And it's a very interesting speech he gives him. And they then start to really look into this. And then Bill says to Dan, like, we're going to have to Ray says we're going to have to require a lot of capital, a lot of money for funding for this. Where are we going to find it? And Bill says, I don't know. And instead of lying to him and saying he did know, he was very genuine and said, yeah, I don't know. And I love that. So then what do? They get Ray to buy a third mortgage. It's hilarious. Because, well, no, Peter's not going to buy a third mortgage. No, Egon's not going to buy a third mortgage. No, It's Ray. And so he buys a mortgage, and they try looking around for a place to work for their extermination business. And they choose a firehouse, an old firehouse, as we know in New York. It's in New York, as we know. It's called Hook and Ladder in New York City. And so they get there, they're looking around, and Egon and Peter are like, nah, I'm not feeling it. And it's just the massive spirit by Ray and his total love for the place that they just have to say yes. Because Ray is the spirit of this film and the spirit of the Ghostbusters. He has so much heart and just really wants them to succeed. And so he basically says, why don't we just stay here for tonight? Like, sleep here to try it out. And Egon says, like, the wiring's bad, the neighborhood's terrible. No. And then after Egon's whole burst of energy, they go, okay, maybe okay, let's do it. And now we show a new character that's introduced, Dana. Her name isn't mentioned until a few minutes into the film. She gets out of a cab, she goes to her apartment, and we see two characters interact. And in this scene, we also see what the relationship is as well. Rick Moranis plays Louis Tully, who is a neighbor to Dana and is constantly standing in his apartment waiting for her to come down the hallway so he can talk to her. And so it establishes very quickly upon in the movie that she does not want to talk to him, that she tries to not get away from him, but she tries to avoid conversations with him 9 times out of 10. And he has a thing for her, but she totally is not into it. But he is totally oblivious to the fact, which makes for some great comedic moments in the film and for his delivery of his lines. And Rick Moranis delivers an astonishing performance and is hilarious in his portrayal of this character and gives a really entertaining supporting performance that you can't help but love. And then the rapport between Dana and Rick Moranis is just fantastic. Then you have, and then when she gets into her apartment, before she gets into her apartment, actually, let me back up. He also discusses with her that her TV was on and that he tried to turn his TV on and make it loud like hers was, and then she just closed the door. Now, she turns the TV on and she sees a commercial. What's this ad? It's an ad for the Ghostbusters. So now we know what they're called. And they make this kind of like old, kind of like cheesy, like TV ad. And I loved it. They make a legitimate ad in the film of Ghostbusters, and they show it, this like 30-second commercial. And she turns it off. She goes to the kitchen, and you see her taking out her groceries. By the way, there's foreshadowing in this movie. She gets a package of Stay Puft Marshmallow Man marshmallows. Remember that. So then she's unpacking her groceries, and this is what I love about the film. This is what I mean by it's kind of creepy. Is that you see that they show a nice close-in shot of the eggs. And then they start like shaking a bit, and then it goes pop. And then you see another one pop. And then they start cooking on the counter. And you see like steam come up. And then she goes over and she's like totally freaked out. And then you hear this growl. This creepy growl. She turns her head. She goes towards the fridge. And it's a nice shot of her from behind going towards this fridge. And then you see her open it. And you see this like temple in flames. And you see these like terror dogs, and it goes Zool, and she screams and shuts the door. That's a great way to make it creepy and shows that they're not going to make it all comedic, but they're going to make it also really kind of creepy too. They set a creepy and comedic tone that's perfectly done throughout this entire film. Then they show a next scene of the Ghostbusters now trying to really get into this business head on. So you see like Bill like helping the guy with the banner on top, saying, "Do you think it looks too small?" And then you see Ray come in with a hearse, and he's like, "We found the car." And then after they go in, and you see that now they have a secretary, which we get introduced to with the scene with Bill, and Janine played wonderfully by Annie Potts, and she is very dry, she's very witty, and her delivery is fantastic, her performance is fantastic. She's not in the film for a massive part of the film, but when she is, she's fantastic. And her scene, she has with Bill when he comes in after speaking with Ray is hilarious because she has a very deadpan voice the entire movie, especially when she talks to Bill. She cannot take him seriously, and he can't take her seriously at all. So you have great comedy come out of that. And then on top, after that scene, after that third scene, you see Egon come up from her desk because he's helping fix her computer. Now, here's another part we see of Janine. She has a thing for Egon because she tries having a conversation with him, and he's totally not picking up on her signals, and he's just fixing this computer. And she's trying very hard to try to have a conversation with him, and she asks, "What are your hobbies?" And he's just he doesn't know how to answer, and so she says, "What are your hobbies?" And he says, "I cook exposed moles and fungus." Like it's funny because he comes off seriously, and it comes off funny to the audience. And then the scene is followed by Dana now comes into the firehouse, and the scene with Bill and Annie Potts, like she just said to Bill, there were no customers, no calls, nothing, and no messages. She comes in, and Bill just jumps up and jumps over his desk and goes over to her and first off lies and says that they get customers day in and day out, and Janine gives him a very dirty look, knowing that's a total and utter lie. And he brings her upstairs, and they kind of discuss what's happening with you, like what's wrong. And we know what's wrong, and so we see how this plays out. So she goes over, and she explains to them, and all of them are present. Egon's there, Ray's there, Peter's there. And so Egon and Ray try to take it very seriously, saying, "Okay, what's in your fridge? Like, we'll go to the library, we'll check out some books, and we'll try to get to the bottom of this." And then she says, "Oh, I don't believe in any of this." And Bill kind of just goes along with her and says, "Oh, I don't believe in any of this either." And Egon and Ray look at each other like, "Yeah, you just like this girl." And so then he comes up with a plan. Okay, he's like, "All right, guys, how about I go to Dana's apartment, and I can check this out and see what's actually at her apartment." And so he goes to her apartment, and this is a fantastic scene because we already know who Peter's like. He's a sarcastic smartass who does not take anything seriously, and he will flirt with any girl that comes his way. And Dana's a massive one. And so in the scene, we see Bill and Sigourney have we see how their chemistry, first off, their rapport and their delivery back and forth is fantastic. You really buy into the two of them, and they share a great chemistry. You can see that he's trying to hit on her at every turn he gets. She is totally not buying into it, so he goes in, kind of plays with the piano, and then he has this little contraption he's using, and then she says, "You don't really look like a scientist, you look like a game show host," showing that she does not take him seriously with his profession, and she can see that he doesn't take anything seriously, which is great because then we now have a character who sees him for who he is and never really has fully acknowledged up to this point that he doesn't take anything seriously. So for her to call out his unprofessionalism is actually kind of brilliant because it's never really addressed, and she's the only one who addresses it the entire movie. And now they go to the kitchen, and he examines the eggs, and she explains to him what's happening, and then he's totally like, okay. And then she says, "You came all this way, you want to check the fridge." And now this scene is another moment of perfect music and build up, because the music builds up in a way that's very creepy. And once he opens the fridge, it goes for laughs, and I love it because he has, like, there's nothing there. There's no gate. There's nothing. Like we saw earlier, there was, but there isn't. And so she's like, okay, it's either I have a monster in my kitchen or I'm completely crazy. And he's like, well, I don't think you're crazy. And then now he just kind of really goes at her and says, okay, like, I'm madly in love with you. And then she says, can you leave? And then after he basically turns around, he goes, you know what? I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to prove and say Pete Venkman can get things done. I can be taken seriously. She goes, all right. And so he leaves. And there's a small moment. It's not unspoken. Nothing comes out of Rick Moranis' mouth. He comes out of the apartment thinking it's Dana. I actually think he came out thinking it was Dana, which it wasn't. It was Peter. And the door slams on him and he gets locked out. Then we go to the next shot of them eating at the firehouse. And now, when they're eating at the firehouse, you see them discuss that they don't want to lose Dana as a client. We should keep her and take her out for dinner. And then Ray kind of goes, well, this is the last of the petty cash. Like, we hardly have any more money. And so then there's a fantastic, iconic moment. And it's a shot I love of Janine. And it's a faraway shot, and it kind of gets in tighter. And tighter and tighter. And it shows her and the phone rings. She's tying her shoe. She picks it up and she goes, and she says who they are, and she goes, yeah. And you never hear the guy's voice, you just hear her response, and she goes, you do? You have? No kidding. What's the address? Oh, yes, they'll be totally discreet. We know they won't. And then she said, we got one. And she puts her hand on the alarm, and then the alarm goes off, and this is a great introduction to not only how seriously they're taking their position now as Ghostbusters, and they're taking this head on, but a great introduction to also the car. And I'll tell you why. Because the car is the Ecto one, and it looks, there's smoke, and you see like the license plate, this Ecto one, you see the sirens, you see the headlights, and it just busts out of that firehouse and goes right down the street. It's an amazing introduction to that car. I just love it. It's the best introduction I've seen to any other car next to the DeLorean and Back to the Future when it comes out of Doc Emmett Brown's truck and backs out of it. Second best car reveal is Ghostbusters. And then they go, and then they pull up to the Sedgwick Hotel, and you see the Ghostbuster logo for the first time. Well, wait. Nope. Besides the logo and the very opening credit. But on the car. And then you see them in flight suits, and you see like they have these things on their backs. And they're proton packs. But as we know, they never say the word proton. They never say the word proton packs until the second movie, which I find fascinating. But they get into there, and the guy who runs the hotel manager, is very terrified. It's like, okay, guys, there's something on the third floor, and we just, 13th floor, there's a disturbance, it's been quite a few years, and they're like, and then Ray says, "Oh, we have this kind of thing all the time," and we know they haven't because this is the first time they've ever gone on a mission and actually try to capture a ghost for the second time. The first time they never even captured it; they just ran at it and ran away. So this is the first time we're seeing them with actual stuff to defend themselves with, and we're going to see how this goes. This is basically like a trial run for them, and no one in that hotel knows that. We know that, but they don't. And so then they get in the elevator, and there's a great scene in the elevator actually that I really do love. And Egon says, Ray says, "We've never had a successful test of this equipment." And then Peter says, "I blame myself." No, Egon says, "I blame myself," and then Peter says, "So do I." Because they never tested it. So how do we know how this is going to go down? We don't. So they're just going to like create so much property damage. But do they care? No. Because yeah, it's hilarious. And then they turn on the proton pack, and they don't know what it's going to do. So what does Peter and Egon do? They back up. Then they take out their wand. Ray takes out his wand, and they see this woman with a cart, and they just take their proton packs, and they just shoot it right at her. And she responds with one of the best lines, "What the hell are you doing?" And it's great because it shows, one, we also get to see what those proton packs are like and what they do and how destructive they are. But also that they are totally incompetent on their first mission. Well, I should say second mission. And so they split up, and I love this because we see how each of them are able to handle themselves trying to capture this ghost, hopefully. So you see like Peter wandering through the halls, and you see Egon go up and down a guy, and he's with his peaky mirror, and he pokes him, and there's no dialogue, and I find that scene hilarious. Then we see Ray. He has a cigarette in his mouth and sees this green kind of like this green ghost. And I want to first say this not CGI. I'll say CGI. The special effects. The special effects on the ghost in this film hold up so incredibly well because there are some films with CGI now that looks terrible. This film was made in 1984, and the effects in this film hold up because they gave a shit and it worked so well. It still holds up, and I love it. So then you see Ray, like he's like, "What do I do?" And by the way, that Ghost Slimer was a tribute to John Belushi because he was originally supposed to play Peter, and he died unfortunately before the filming could start. So they made a tribute to him by making one of the ghosts, and just like him, he was a party animal. So they did that as a little tribute to him, and I love that. And so you see how Ray reacts. He goes, "I don't know what to do. I'm gonna try to hold him myself," and so he just shoots him. And you see that the trolley of tables just smacks against the table and just makes a big old mess. And now we see another great scene played out, which is when Peter comes across this ghost, and it's a fantastic moment, and it's iconic because, as we know, as I've said many times, he takes nothing seriously. But this is a ghost, and his reaction is not funny. He's genuinely actually scared, which is hilarious because he hasn't been scared this entire movie. He wasn't scared of the first ghost. He wasn't nothing. But this scared him, and I find it interesting. So he calls Ray, going, "Ray, he's looking at me," and he tries not to move because he doesn't know what's going to happen, and it goes right at him, and he screams. And then Ray runs to him, and he says, and he has this goo all over him, and he says, "He slimed me." And instead of Ray going, dude, you're okay, he's like, no. He goes, great, actual physical contact. Can you move? I just love that instead of going, man, are you okay? Like, are you hurt? No, no, no. We actually got some residue we can use. I love it. And then Egon calls him, guys, I found the ghost. He's in a ball. Come down here. And now they've created massive property damage already. And the hotel and on one of the floors, I believe. There was just one floor they went on. They just moved around a lot. And now they go down to the ballroom. And they lock the door. And they go in. And this ballroom was set for a dinner. Like, it was set for an event. They trashed the hell out of it. And they go in. And they see it on the ceiling. They shoot at it. The chandelier falls down. And there's a line where he goes, oh, that was my fault. And then Peter goes, it's okay. The table broke the fall. And then there's actually a genuine moment by Egon that also educates us on what these proton streams can do and how dangerous they are. Saying basically, don't cross the streams. Because, and there's actually science behind it that they wrote into the screenplay that I love, which was total protonic reversal, which is, I love that they had real backbone to the information they were giving us. It wasn't just some made, yes, it's made up, but there's actual backstory to these terms, to these words, to the proton packs and what they do. So I find that very informative and really cool, actually, instead of just being, here is just a proton pack, this is what it does. It shoots things. No, there's actual information we can learn that they've written in the screenplay and backstory and really give you detailed things throughout this film about their job, their position, the stuff they have, everything. I love the passion driven into this film. That is fantastic. So when they go at Slimer in the ballroom, they try to shoot at the table, explodes, table's a disaster. And there's a great moment outside of the room because since they're making such ruckus inside the room, you don't know how the manager's reacting outside of the room because we never thought of things from his point of view. So from his point of view, he's hearing like noise and stuff. So he tries to, he's like, go, it's like the door's locked. Can you like try to get this unlocked? So they throughout this entire time they're trying to bust this one ghost. He's trying to get the door unlocked, but they don't know that. And I love how we get insight into what these characters aren't seeing, but we're seeing it. And then also then Peter just can't take a moment ever seriously, and he's like, wait, I've always wanted to do this. And he just pulls the cloth off the table and he goes, the flowers are still standing. I love that. And then also they then go on to separate sides of the room, and they're like, okay guys, we're gonna try to actually bring this thing down. They bring it down and they capture it. And it was the first time we've ever seen them capture a ghost. I'm like, damn. Like, don't look at the trap. And it goes down, and it's a fantastic effect. You see the thing open, and it brings it down, and it shuts it, and you see smoke coming from it. And then Rahad delivers a fantastically, perfectly timed line saying, that wasn't such a chore now, was it? And they look at him like, man, we just like got slime, we property damage. Like, dude, this was not easy. And then right when they unlock the door, the manager, Bill busts open the door and says, we came, we saw, we kicked its ass. And it's fantastic. They are so happy, like, yeah, man, we captured a first ghost. Well, second ghost, technically. Captured a ghost successfully. And then now comes a part where they discuss how much money they want. And this is great fun because you can tell, I don't know if you guys know this, but you can tell Egon is telling Peter how much he wants by his finger gestures. He goes this, and he goes like this. And so he says $4,000. And it was also, I think it goes around to $5,000. And then after they basically say, well, we can put it back for you. And they're basically threatening them, if you don't pay us the money, we will just put the ghost back and you can deal with the thing yourself. And they're like, oh, yeah, we'll just pay you. And then there's a great little montage after this. And we see kind of like the rise of the Ghostbusters and how massive they get, how popular they get. And it's not like it's a cheesy montage. It actually is very effective. It's only like, I think it's probably around like 2 to 3 minutes. And you see how they're in the newspapers, they're all over the place. Larry King even talks about them and how they're really rising in popularity and how successful they're becoming. And I actually really enjoy the rise and fame of the Ghostbusters montage because it's not cheesy, it's not over the top, it's not like self-indulgent. It's really really fun to watch, and also has an iconic song that many people may know. The Ghostbusters song by Ray Parker Jr. is played throughout the entire montage. Now there's a moment in this montage. To this day, I am stunned. Is in this film for a PG movie. There's a shot of a ghost giving oral sex to Ray, and it's never mentioned ever after. They never talk about it, nothing. After this montage ends, we also see a new character introduced, which is Winston Zeddemore. And he is just looking for a job. He's the everyman. And that's what I love about him, is that he's not a scientist. He's not a mathematician. He just wants a job. And I love that because you need someone who can keep these characters rooted. And he is like, he's the audience. He reacts to everything. And so there comes his interview for his job. And they and then Janine gives him a very interesting job description of things does he believe in, like UFOs, astral projections, mental telepathy, ESP, clairvoyance, telekinetic movement, the Loch Ness monster, the theory of Atlantis. And instead of saying yeah to all that and lying to her, he just says very blatantly and honestly, if there's a steady paycheck, and I'll believe anything you say. And I love that because he's brutally honest. And he doesn't lie to her. He doesn't exaggerate. No. He says, yeah, if you give me a decent chunk of change, I'll believe anything you say. And then you see Peter and Ray get out of the car, and they're exhausted. And basically, Janine introduces them to Winston and says, oh, awesome, you got the job. And then there comes a moment after this where you see Peter interact with a guy named another new character comes in, and his name is Walter Peck. But I will discuss that guy in a second. Right after the Winston being brought into this film, we haven't seen Dana in a while, and I love that they go back to her. They don't make her back for our noise. Not background noise, sorry. They don't make her character fall into the background. She comes back. They bring her back, and just like in the beginning, we saw him in the apartment, and he says, "Okay, like he said, I'm going to prove myself to you, and I'm going to actually get to the bottom of this." And he does. He actually takes her seriously. He gathered information. He goes to where she was. She plays an instrument and in the orchestra, and he talks to her and says basically about Gozer and all that, and she has no idea what this is. And then after he just basically says what he tries to make a date with her, and says, okay, how about we make a study date, and we'll read. I'll bring the guy, and we'll eat and read. And so then she's like, fine. And then after that, it goes back. They go back to the firehouse, and you see Ray explain the he explains the trap and how all that works. And I love it because instead of, sorry for my glaring, I'm just fixing something here. And so instead of him just assuming he knows how everything works, he shows him how things operate. So how we open this trap, they do a step-by-step process, and I love it. And he shows him how you put the trap in and how you properly put it into this machine. And then we see Bill and Walter Peck, who is an environmental protection agent, who basically has a very valid reason. He says, well, I want to know why you guys are even before that, Bill has an argument with Janine saying, she says, well, you said you'd hire more help. And he's like, Janine, you have no problem finding a job elsewhere. He's being very serious. She's like, I've quit better jobs than this. And I like how he has lots of layers, Bill, in this movie. He's not a one-trick pony. He's comedic, he's funny, he's smooth, he's everything. I love it. He's very complex. And in this scene, you really see him showcase that, because he goes from being a smartass to incredibly serious by the end of the scene, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you how brilliant the scene is executed. And another scene brilliantly executed, that's my favorite, and that's in a bit. But in the scene with him and Walter Peck basically says, okay, what you guys are doing here could be incredibly hazardous to the environment, and we want to know what kind of chemicals are in your basement. Now, you either show me what's in there, or I come back with a restraining order, a court order. And first off, Bill kind of says oh, before he even says that, he's just being a smartass, line after line, saying why do you want to see the storage facility? And he's like, well, I'm just curious. And then he gives him that valid reason, and then he says, well, you go get a court order and I'll sue your ass for wrongful prosecution. And then Walter says, you can have it your way. And he comes back. That's not the last time we see him. Then in the basement, after Ray shows Winston that the containment unit, Egon also brings up on a very serious note, which is how the containment unit's getting very big and very crowded. There's a lot, since we've been catching so many ghosts, there's only so many we can capture in there before it gets too crowded. And so then he says, okay, imagine this Twinkie is the size of the New York area. By this morning sample I took, Twinkie 50 feet long, weighing approximately 600 pounds. That's a lot of weight. And then Peter comes down and says, okay, we just got to visit Environmental Protection Agency. And then he says, how's the grid holding up? And then Winston answers, that's just not good. I love how it's not always sunshine and happiness. They show, some shit goes down and it's not going well. They're able to show the darker moments as well and not always make it so funny. And I love that. And they do it very well. And they execute it very well by the performances and the very sharp writing. So now we go back to Dana's. And we see a shot of the building. And it's lightning out. It's kind of creepy. And you see on the top of it, there's these terror dog statues. And you see, I believe it's the eye that comes out. And you see this red eye. It's kind of creepy. And it pans next to Lewis's party. And he is having a party for his clients, and he has no idea what to do and how to talk to anyone there, and he is totally out of his element. And he's trying to have fun and show his guests some fun. And you see, and Rick Moranis really brings this character to life. Like, he delivers this character fantastically. And then you see this terror dog on the bed, and the effect it has is fantastic. And then you see this dog growl. We see it on the bed, but we also hear a growl. And he goes, okay, who brought the dog? And it jumps out. And Mabel freak out, and they run out. And then Rick Moranis runs out. But moments before that, I forgot. My fault. So you see Dana in her apartment. Now, this is the scene that scared the crap out of me as a kid. So she's on her phone. She's on the phone with her mom, saying how she has a date with a Ghostbuster, and she'll tell her how it goes, and then she gets off the phone, and you see a claw twist into the door, and you see that she goes, oh shit. She takes her, and you see arms come out of the chair, and they wrap around her mouth, and they turn the chair 360, and it goes right into the door and slams it. And you see this dog, and it's like drilling, and it's like, damn! It's really serious, and it's really scary, and it's really well done. And then it pans to, like I said, this thing with Lewis. And then Lewis runs out of the apartment, and he's like, help. And he's running anywhere he can go, and he sees this restaurant, and he's trying to knock on the glass, trying to get in. People see him. Well, actually, hold on, they don't see him. And he tries to get in the door, and they're not unlocking it. And this terror dog comes up to him, and there's a amazing shot. And I mean amazing, I mean it's brilliant. There's a shot of this dog's face up close, like a nice up close frame, and its jaw just drops down and growls, and you see the horns and the head and the eyes and the mouth, and it's amazing visual and practical effects. I am telling you, it's astonishing how this film never won a fucking Oscar. So then after, you see him he gets, I think, eaten, because you don't see it, but it's heavily implied. And then the restaurant stops eating, and they look at him as he's getting eaten, and they resume eating. And it's a great scene. It's scary, but also kind of funny. And they walked that line in that scene perfectly well, because they could have gone one of two ways. Because if they were too funny in the scary scene, it would have then compromised the scariness of it. But it balanced the line perfectly. And now Bill, since he has that date, goes into the apartment and says, what happened? They said someone brought an animal to the party and went berserk. And so he comes in with flowers, and he has no idea what happened. And so he opens the door, and he sees Dana totally is not who she was, because she's not possessed. And this is a great moment, because he could have obviously just been smooth with her, but he's actually very serious. And I love that. He says hello, and she goes, are you the gatekeeper? And he says, not that I know of. And she slams the door, and he says, oh, yes, I am. I'm a friend of his. He goes in and says, so what are we doing today, Zool? And she says, we're preparing for the coming of Gozer. And he says, Gozer, huh? She says, the Destructor. And she tries to lure him in and try to seduce him so that she can have him. And he's not into it. He had one funny line saying, so I guess the roses worked. But he's very, what's wrong? Where's Dana? This is not you. And then after, he says, I want to count to 3. And if I don't see Dana, there's going to be some serious problems in this apartment. And then after there's a great practical effect, and she levitates above the bed and growls right at it. And he's like, can you please come down? And he growls. And then there's a line she also says, it's not, there is no Dana, only Zool. And then after that, the next scene cuts to, if I can remember, if it's Lewis on the streets just going mad because he's now possessed. And he's running all over the place, and then the police then knock on the door, and they go, hey, we found this guy, Rick Moranis, and we thought you'd be interested in him because you guys are interested in this kind of spooky stuff. And so then after, Egon examines him and sees something's very off about him, and he says, what's your name? And he says, Vince Clortho, Keymaster of Gozer. And then Annie Potts' character says, "No, your name's Louis Tully. This is Central Park West." And it's a very well done scene because we see one Dana, and then they show Lewis, the two people who are both possessed, and we see how they're both examined by both different characters and how they're evaluated. She's evaluated from the supposed day that was supposed to happen, and then he's dropped off at the headquarters, and then Egon gets on the phone with Peter and says, "Okay, like, what should we do? Should we bring these guys together?" And then Egon's like, "No, I think that'd be extraordinarily dangerous because they could be a threat. They want to get together because they want to do something destructive. And I don't think the last thing we want is them getting together because then it will do something terrible." So then after that all happens, there's a scene in the car with Winston and Ray. We catch up with them in the car, and they have a talk, and Ray's very self-involved in the blueprints, and Winston's like, "Why are you so involved in that?" And he says, "Well, the structural detailing is very, very strange." And then they have a very deep conversation, like, "Do you believe in God?" And then Ray's like, "No, I've never met him." And then Winston's like, "Oh, I love Jesus Estalio." That's what he says. And then he says, like, "Do you believe in the like the end of the world?" And he says, "Every ancient religion has its own myth about the end of the world." And then Winston gives a very chilling delivery, saying, "Myth? Why do you think we're so busy lately? Is because the dead have been rising from the grave." And it shows, like, maybe that's true. Maybe that's why they're so busy, because something bigger force is at nature here and at control. We are we never thought of it that way until Winston totally opens her eyes, and I love that. He looks at things from different angles that we never thought about. And then after that, we see Walter Peck, as like he said, he's gonna come back, and he comes back, and he says, like, if and then Janine tries to interfere, and she says no, and he says, "Well, if you try to interfere, I'll have you arrested for trying to interfere with a police officer." And so then goes downstairs and tries to shut this thing down. Egon says, "Don't shut this thing down. You don't know what the power is. What this can do. Do not shut this down." And then Peter gets there and is very serious and says, "You do not." And then Egon explains to him that he's trying to shut this thing down. And he says, "If you shut this thing down, we will not be held responsible for your actions." And he says, "Just shut it off." We as the audience also do not know what this thing will do. We know that it's getting crowded. We know it may be very dangerous. We don't know what the consequences will be if they shut that thing off. But the main key characters are saying, "Don't shut this off." We don't know what could happen. They shut it off, and and then they run out of the firehouse, and the top of it explodes. And you see, and then they try, and then the environmental protection agent tries to get them arrested, saying basically this is a result of their actions. And they're like, "No, you're the one who triggered it off. If you didn't do anything, this would have happened." And it's a very serious moment. And then we see all the ghosts. And there's a great moment where you see all the ghosts, and they're all going across New York, and they're causing mayhem, and great practical effects and visual effects. And there's a great shot of Dana's apartment and the clouds getting black. And then they're now in the prison cell, well, in a holding cell. And then they kind of talk about, okay, what could potentially happen now? What are at stakes? And so then Peter then says, okay, he says to Ray, like, "Okay, guys, pretend for a moment I'm not a scientist. Give me the basic terms. What could happen?" And Egon says, well, he talks a lot about the history, that there was this architect, and there could be, like, the possibility of the end of the world, and we have to prepare for the fact that may actually happen. And so then he talks about how this guy did rituals, and there's a lot of history behind it, and they show the stakes. And so now they get a call that the mayor wants to talk to them. This is a very special moment, and I love this moment in the movie. It's probably one of my favorite moments. It's probably my favorite moment in the entire freaking movie. And why I love it so much is because it's a scene where we see how things are going to play out for them. If they're going to get arrested, if they're going to be able to take this thing down and how they're going to explain themselves to the mayor because of the EPA. It all clashes through. And the mayor basically says, okay, so what happened here? Like, and they talk about the mayhem and the EPA guys just not being able to explain himself. And Winston and them are basically saying, like, if you do not let us help you, this could be the end of the world. And he says, what do you mean? And they said, like, an apocalypse. Like, anything is on the table here right now. You have to let us do our thing. And then the EPA guy's cool, and you're not seriously considering believing these men. And Peter has a really convincing way of saying, and he mocks him and calls him ridiculous, basically saying everything was fine before you shut down the grid. And he says, yeah, but you guys are put on a light show and it's all fake. And they're like, no, it's not. And so then after Peter says, well, just think of it this way. If you let us do this, you would have saved millions of lives of unregistered voters. And you're also going to benefit for yourself too. And he goes, huh, that's true. And he lets them do their thing. He kicks out the EPA agent and he says, okay, what do you guys need from me? And then now they're on the final mission. They pull up and there's this great shot of them coming in and there's people rooting on them and they get out and it's like there's celebrities. They come out and they're working the crowds and they're getting the packs on and they're shouting Ghostbusters and then the ground erupts and they go and they fall under. And they get up and they're like, we were prepared for that. And I love that. It's a practical effect too. They had the ground shake. And I just love that. And then they go inside the building. And there's so much momentum, so much energy. And then it just stops because they have to get up the stairs. Because there's no electricity. I love the realistic view of this. They go up the stairs. They have to get all up all those floors. Then they get up there and they get to the very top of the building. And they see Dana transform into a dog. Now, transforms into a dog, and he's seen so much weird shit by this point. He's like, okay, I'm just accepting it. Okay, she's a dog. And then after you see them go up, and there's a massive set, and it's this big stage, and you see steam, and you see the pterodogs, and this gate, and it opens, and you see this person walk out, and it's Gozer, and they interact with the god, and the god, the supposed god, and so it comes out and basically says, or you were God. And so they're all terrified, and Peter gives a great response, going, "Go get her, Ray." And Ray goes up, basically saying, "We are like, can you please return to your place of origin?" And then asks, "Oh, you were God?" And then Peter's like, "Yes, say you were God, hell yeah." And then Ray goes, honestly, he goes, "No," and she goes, "Then die." They go flying to the edge of the building, and then Winston's like, if someone asks if you're a God, you say yes. They go back, and they shoot at her, and she disappears. They think, okay, that's simple. But it was way too easy, like Egon explains after that. And he goes, this is extraordinarily dangerous, bad. And so she says, basically, choose the form of your destructor, and then whatever you want, it will come and destroy you. I will come in the form of your destructor. So then they say, empty your heads. And Ray became too distracted, and he thought of, what do you think of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man? And they go, what did you think of? What was the form? What? We didn't decide on this. And you see a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man come down Manhattan. And they're like, nice thinking, right? So they think, okay, why don't we just roast it? So they aim their sticks down and they shoot at it. And then they run and they go, what should we do? And Egon goes, we cross the streams. And they're like, okay. And they revisit that because earlier they said that was dangerous. And he goes, whoa, you said it was bad. He goes, yes, but there's a very slim chance we could survive. They may die, but you know what? They could survive. So then they cross the streams and they prepare that they could die. And they all cross the streams. A massive explosion. And you see them right after. All Stay Puft is all covered in marshmallow on them. They're still alive. And they all reconnect, and they say, is everyone okay? And everything's destroyed. And then after, they think that Dana's dead because there's a massive explosion. And then after, you hear some rumbling around, and you see she's alive. They get the rubble off her, and she's alive. Lewis is alive. They get outside. They see the Ghostbusters alive, and they all celebrate. Peter kisses Dana, and then they just get in the Ecto-1, and they end the movie, and they drive off, and it fades to black, and I love it. And Slimer comes right into the screen. And what I love about Stay Puft is things got weird. Like, you see the ghost, and they build upon that. So you accept the weirdness of the Stay Puft. Like, it's not too weird because they built up your ex. They kept building and building and building, and then you see the Stay Puft, and you're like, okay, I accept it by this point. I love that, and they just, it's a brilliant movie. I have never broken it down a film like this for so long on a video before, but this is my favorite film, and I had to do it. This film is my favorite film of all time. It influenced me to get into cinema. Well, my first film I saw in theaters was Finding Nemo when I was a child, but Ghostbusters broadened my horizons, and it really astonished and like blew me away. This film is a 10 out of, like, it's like a 50 out of 10. It's an amazing movie. I recommend everyone see it. It's my favorite film. Perfectly acted, well written, well structured. It's spooky, it's romantic, it's everything. It is my favorite movie of all time. Thank you guys for listening. Me talk about and break down Ghostbusters and why I love it so much, scene by scene. I really hope you guys enjoyed me breaking this down, as it's my favorite film. I always love doing these videos for you guys. Watch out for my next few reviews, but until next time, this is the Movie Man, signing off.